Hello, everybody. My name is Giovanni Chavez, professor in the School of Education at UPAEP. It's a pleasure to me to have Dr. Tutaleni Asino, associate professor in OSU, who is visiting at UPAEP. Dr. Tutaleni research is about educational technology, comparative education, innovation, and subtopics around education and technology. I want to thank you for accepting the invitation to this interview. Today we're going to talk about innovation and transformation in education. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for an opportunity to have this conversation and just to enjoy the wonderful environment at UPAEP and in Puebla in general. So thank you.
That's right. You're welcome wherever you want. UPAEP is your home, as you know.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to start with some questions about that topics, and you're the expert of innovation, technology, and so on. So I want to ask you something about your work at OSU.
Mm-hmm.
What is your role in School of Education?
So I am in the College of Education and Human Sciences, or internationally we usually call those the Faculty of Education and Human Sciences. And I'm in the department, or what we call at our university, the School of Educational Foundation, Leadership and Aviation, or CEFLA for short. And in there, we have multiple programs. The program that I'm in right now is called Educational Technology. We also call it Learning Design and Technology. So we have master's programs, we have PhD programs, and we also have certificate programs. The PhD program is called Learning Design and Technology. The master's is called Educational Technology. So my role in there, I'm an associate professor of learning design and technology, and I'm also the director of our emerging technologies and creativity research lab, which around the world could also be called an innovation space, an innovation studio. And what we do there is really try to find creative ways of integrating technology into teaching and learning practices, to create a comfortable place for people to come in and play with new and emerging technologies so that they can decide if they want to use them or not. Because one of the challenge in adopting things into education is that sometimes we don't want to look foolish, or we're afraid that we're going to fail. So if we have a space where we can come and try things out and play with things, and really see how they work before we adopt them, I think that helps. So my role in there is I teach classes, I supervise PhD and master students, and I also supervise a team that runs the lab together with my other colleagues in the program as well.
Wow, it's too much to do. That's very interesting. Do you know if there are more labs in your university?
We do. We have other labs. The lab that we have is the only one of that kind. But we also have my good colleague, Dr. Tilanka, in design and merchandising, has a lab that he runs called the Mixed Reality Lab. The Mixed Reality Lab is really where they are spending time looking at design of virtual spaces. Dr. Tilanka is an architect by design, so by training. So he really looks at the building of these virtual spaces as well. So we have other labs. There's also I think a center called Stickle, which is more associated with science education. So we have a lot of these different spaces in there as well.
Did you collaborate with
We collaborate with them, so especially if Dr. Lanka and I collaborate a lot. We share students, or some of my students go to his classes
Exactly.
and so on, and we work on different projects together. But other projects, so our lab, the Emerging Technologies and Creative Research Lab, is open to the whole college, so people can come in and look at things and try different things as well.
Oh, that's great. It's a new perspective on how to teach, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's a new perspective on how to teach, but it's really more about challenging our established notions of what it means to teach, what it means to learn. It's about just because if you want to be creative, if you want to be innovative, you have to do things that you're not doing regularly. You have to challenge yourself and say, okay, well, what if I do it this way? So if you if your way to come from your house to Upaeb is the same street all the time, um, your mind does something funny when you decide to take a different route,
Exactly.
right? So if you have done the same way of teaching all the time and someone says, hey, have you thought about this? Something else happens. And I think for me, that's where creativity happens when you do things in a different way that you haven't done it before. Because, like, oh, wait, what if I do this? What if I do that? And then experiment and learn from that process. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And what do you think about teaching with the support of technology?
I think it's hard to not use technology in teaching today, right? Because I think it's such a an important part of everything that we do. Um, Everything that we do these days is informed and influenced or intersects with technology. Um, and it's simple, even if it's just creating a PowerPoint in your class, that's technology. Using a computer to read a PDF, that's technology. But I think there's more things that you can do with that, right? Maybe something like, integrating YouTube videos in your lessons, right? Maybe um, making use of augmented reality or virtual reality applications in your practices. I think technology has a way of making certain things come to life, and I think that really helps with transforming education because we're making certain abstract concepts real again. And I think for me, that's the power of educational technology. Not just you can also make things more efficient, but I just really think for me the part that I get excited about is can we do something different than the way we used to do it before, right? So, as a child, I used to not like math, right? But at my school in Namibia was a school that I went to called Namibia's English Primary School. We had one computer lab at this school, and every school break, I would go to the lab, and they had computer games that teach math, and I would spend so much time learning math through those things. But when I was in the classroom, I hated math. But with this technology, I was just really excited about like, oh wow, look at all of these things. So there's a lot of excitement that technology brings into the learning processes, and I think that can help get students excited, get them engaged, and then once you get them engaged and excited, the learning that can happen is deep learning and really sustained, can be sustained for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's very
yeah.
interesting. I think that math is a really hard
It is.
subject.
It's a hard subject.
So using technology would help
Yeah.
with the what you said exactly,
Exactly.
engagement,
Engagement. Yeah.
and feel something different
Yes.
to be I don't know ready for an open
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
for learning.
Yes.
That's great. About using technology,
Yeah.
what does it mean for you? Innovation in education.
Innovation in education for me means a few things, but for me, what it really means is finding creative ways and new ways to do things, right? It could be to do new things, or it could be to do old things, but in a more efficient, interactive way. But I always say we should never forget that innovation comes from a need. There has to be a need. These days, many of us have access to technology. It doesn't mean that every technology that we have should be used for education or it should be used for everything, right? So, technology, one way to look at it is almost like a toolkit, right? If you have a toolkit in your house, that you have a hammer, you have a screwdriver, you have nails, you have all of these things, you're not going to use them all at once. You're going to decide what you want to use it for, right? And then, you use it for that way. Similarly, if you have an iPad and a cell phone, you have a laptop, you have a desktop, you have a TV, you're probably not going to be using all of those at the same exact time. You're going to decide, wait, today, I'm going to the swimming pool. I'm just going to take my phone. Or I'm going to take my iPad and I'll sit and read. Or right now, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be riding a bus and I'm just going to take my phone. I'm going to read on my phone, right? Or I'm in the kitchen. I'm having dinner with my family, or I'm cooking with my family. Well, I'm going to use the TV to be able to watch. So it's really about being able to identify the right tool, the right technology, and how that fits in that context. So it's about identifying that innovation. For me, is about identifying that need. But it has to be a need. It has to be a learning need for your students to be able to meet your learning objective, and then you can use that tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting because when we're talking about learning,
Yeah.
we used to think just in the classroom,
Yeah.
Students, and also teachers.
Yeah.
But teachers right now, they have to be training
Yeah.
in technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your experience,
Yeah.
what are the answers that teachers give you to refuse technology to adoption for innovation?
There's
Can we make a stop?
Yeah.
And you can answer.
I can answer that
after.
afterwards. Sounds good. Sounds
Please.
good. Sounds good.
We're gonna back.
So-
Thank you.
Innova con tu conocimiento. Reta tu talento. Proyecta tu experiencia. Investiga e impacta a la sociedad. UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Liderar es impactar a los demás, transformando el entorno, impulsando un equipo, proyectando el talento, trabajando en comunidad. Lidera con tus acciones. Lógralo en UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Crea con tu talento. Proyecta tu vocación. Genera nuevas realidades. Encuentra tu forma de expresión en UPAEP. UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Dale acompañamiento e impulso a la familia estudiando nuestra maestría. Genera proyectos educativos que la lleven a alcanzar un desarrollo integral. Trabaja de manera interdisciplinaria para fortalecer la relación familia, escuela y sociedad. Aplica herramientas y estrategias que desarrollen al máximo cada integrante de esta estructura social e implementa programas de apoyo que logren cambios significativos en ella. El momento es ahora. La decisión es tuya. Destaca tu perfil profesional en UPAEP estudiando tu posgrado. UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Thank you. We're back. So, I was asking, in your experience, what are the answers that teachers give you to refuse technology adoption for innovation? What do you think?
There's a few reasons, but I think also we sometimes have to be a bit fair to the teachers. A good teacher, someone who really likes teaching, never will refuse something that is beneficial to their students, right? They will say, okay, let's figure out how to make this work. But but a lot of times we also put teacher under so much pressure with everything else that even if they wanted to try new things, they just don't have the time because maybe the regulation from the state or from the city says that they have to do all of these things this way and so forth. So I think at the same time, we also have to be kind to the teachers because they're really trying their best. But as far as to answer your question, some of the things that the teachers have said to me, there's a few. One is, they don't say this, but I always notice there's a fear. There's a fear. They're afraid in two ways. One is being afraid to make mistakes, right? To get this new thing, and now they look silly in front of their students because they don't know how to use it. And if you have a technology in the classroom, for example, and for me this works across university or just schools. If sometimes it takes longer to set up this new technology than to use it, because by the time you figure out what to plug in and all of these things, and it's just, it's not working, the internet is not working well, or the power, there's just all of these things. And as a teacher, you only have so much time for that period, right? So if you have a class for 50 minutes, you can't waste 10, 20 minutes trying to figure out how this thing works. So, and when you're doing that, you're kind of looking foolish in front of your students. So some teachers don't like to do that. The other part is a funny one for me, which I don't understand why, is sometimes teachers are afraid to fail or to break things, right? It's like, no, I don't want to do that. What if I break it? There's this.
I have to buy a new one.
Exactly, I have to buy a new one. I don't know how to. There's just this fear, and the funny thing is our students face the same thing, but once you empower the teacher that it's okay to try to play, even for them, the mind just opens up and says, oh, look at what I can do with this, what I can do with that. So, for example, I was doing a project with my good friend, Dr. Jessica Briskin from Bloomsburg University. We were in Nigeria working with teachers at the university about how to do blended learning. And we spent time really using different applications. Just something as simple as designing a form in Google. How do you do that? How do you collect data? And at the beginning, you could tell the teachers were a bit apprehensive. Like, I don't know, I don't. And then at the end of the workshop, they were excited because now they know how to do these things, how to integrate all of these different applications that we used. They can see how it fits into their context, and that's amazing for me, because then now they're like, okay, no, now as long as I know how I'm going to use this, as long as I know how it's going to benefit my students, most teachers are going to be able to be excited about that. So the resistance is not because they don't want to use it. From my experience, I think from my experience, the resistance is either because there's a few little things about fear of looking foolish, fear of not knowing what to do the right way, and then also they're running out of time because you only have so much time in your class.
Oh, so, that's very interesting. Yeah. Yes. Sometimes as a teacher, we think that we have to be perfect in front of the students. So,
yes.
We also are learning.
Yes, and
technologies.
And for me that's the fun part about being in education. I always tell my students my best day in education was the day that I found out that I don't have to know everything, that it was okay for me not to know everything and to ask, to research, to learn new things. I think a good teacher is someone who recognizes that they themselves are a lifelong learner. They're always learning, right? Because there's always new method, there's always new technology, there's always new students who are coming in because they have different needs. And I think for me, that's why I love education, because every day is almost different from the other. The students bring different needs, they bring different challenges. The technology comes, yesterday we had this, today we have this one, and all of these things. So I think that's the exciting part for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You were talking about context, context and culture. Culture is very important
Yeah.
for teaching.
Yeah.
I think that some practice
Yeah.
it could work in one context,
Yeah.
but it's not the same in different contexts.
Absolutely.
What do you think that people want to reply that kind of practice?
I think you're absolutely right. Often we want to replicate what happened in Puebla, and we're gonna say we're gonna move it into Windhoek, and then it's gonna work exactly the same way.
Exactly.
It doesn't, because sometimes it will. Most of the time, it doesn't, because everything that exists, all of us as human beings, we exist within a culture, right? And that culture informs how we understand each other, how we understand the world, how we see things, and all of those things. So I think number one, we need to take that into account. Number two, we have to understand the context, right? And not, you have, so for example, let's say you take all of these latest technology and you take it to a country or to a community that does not have reliable internet, right? So let's say we are in Silicon Valley in California, and we're using, maybe Oculus headset for VR and everything else, and it's great. And we get there, we move maybe to a remote area, and there's no electricity to charge those things. Now, we know on the one hand, those immersive learning experiences are good for the learner, but the tool doesn't work in this context. So how do we do it? I used to joke around and say that the computer as it exists right now was not designed for the village. Right now, I'm a village boy. I grew up in a village. And we have, you play outside. There's sand, there's everything else and all that stuff. A computer keyboard, if you get sand in it, it goes in between and the thing doesn't work anymore, right? Because that tool was not designed for my community. I adapted it to my community, right? But now, if it was called design in my community, it would probably have a different interface that is enabling it to survive in that environment. So that's just one of the examples. But I think all learning is contextual, right? It all fits in a specific context. The way you open the door, the way you sit down, the way you read, the way you say hello, the way you maybe even hold a book, the way you use a mouse, all of these things are so context specific that we can't just cut and paste. It has to really be looking at a specific context.
I'm really agree with you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes public policies in
Yeah.
education
Yeah.
made the hard work
Yeah.
to say the teachers what to do.
Yeah.
But they have different context. They're living or teaching in main cities,
Yeah.
or maybe they are teaching in a village,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think we have to rethink the
Yeah.
public policies and how to teach.
Yes.
So in the next block,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about that kind of challenges
Okay.
and how to integrate technology using a good instructional design. What do you
Yes.
think?
Absolutely.
Great.
So,
Thank you. We're gonna make a stop and we're gonna back. Thank you.
Innova con tu conocimiento. Reta tu talento. Proyecta tu experiencia. Investiga e impacta a la sociedad. UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Eres acción que transforma. Explora el mundo y haz lo tuyo. Responde a tus inquietudes, abriendo posibilidades. Crea a través de tu talento, convirtiéndolo en baile, en música, en una expresión viva. Innova con conocimiento y determinación. Buscando soluciones. Impulsando tu vocación. Emprende tus ideas. Dándole vida a tus sueños. Convirtiendo tus planes en hechos. Lidera para transformar tu entorno. Aplicando tu conocimiento y generando cambios sociales. Comparte el espíritu árido. Vive UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
Crea con tu talento. Proyecta tu vocación. Genera nuevas realidades. Encuentra tu forma de expresión en UPAEP. UPAEP, la Universidad Transformadora.
¿Eres de los que considera que el bienestar de la familia es fundamental para el desarrollo de la sociedad? La maestría en Ciencias para la Familia es para ti. Te permite estudiar a la familia desde distintos entornos. Con lo que aprendas podrás hacer propuestas de innovación para ayudar y entender la educación de los hijos, los modelos de familia, el matrimonio y el impacto que esto tiene en el bienestar social. Y lo mejor es que puedes hacerlo desde el lugar en donde te encuentres porque es modalidad online. Conoce más acerca de esta maestría en upaep.mx/online. Inicia hoy.
Great, we are back. So here we are with Dr. Tutaleni, who is visiting professor from OSU. So Tutaleni, we're talking about how context make a different kind of teaching and learning, of course. And in the post, we were talking about how technologies help with that, and we have similar challenges around the world, but sometimes we don't have the same tools to face that challenges.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
You're absolutely right. I find that in education we're making the same mistakes around the world. The one mistake that we all make is that we always think that somebody else somewhere else has a better education system than we do, right? In the U.S., for example, you hear a lot of talk about Finland, right? The Finland phenomenon. Finland is doing a great job and everything else. And I'm involved in comparative international education. And I was at one point at a conference with my colleagues from Finland. And I was excited to talk to them because I was thinking to myself, hey, you guys have all these solutions about education. So I was hoping to learn all of these new things. And one of my friends says, yeah, a lot of people around the world are singing praises about how Finland has a perfect system. But I want to tell you, as someone from Finland, I don't think our system is perfect. And I was very surprised because I was like, wait, but we are all trying to change our system to look like yours, but you're also saying yours is not perfect. And you can look at. So now I have a degree in political science, and one of the things that I've realized about elections around the world, it doesn't matter what country you're in. In every election, there's a focus on education. Exactly. We have to make our education system better. We need to have our student learning more science. We have to have our student learning more mathematics. Everyone everywhere is saying we have to change their system. So that's the mistake we always make, that somebody else has a better system. Instead, what we need to start thinking about is like, hey, Giovanni, you're from Mexico, you have an education system. Can you talk to me about can we talk together? I'll talk to you about my systems in Namibia, and I'll tell you what the challenges that we have there. You talk to me about your challenges. I can also talk to you about the challenges that are in the U.S. because I live there and I work there. And then maybe we will probably start finding that the challenges are either the same or similar, right? We might not have the same tool, but it doesn't matter what country you go in. I can almost 99.9% guarantee you that the school is interested in having students learn mathematics in a more effective way. that students need to be able to be more literate, whether it's computer literate or in some other way. We're all facing these type of issues, but like you said earlier, we have different tools, and that's where the magic happens. Because if you can tell me about your tools and I can tell you about my tools, maybe we might learn something. In the comparative education, we have a saying that by learning about how others do education, it helps me learn more about my education system. And I really genuinely believe that. I think that's where we really need to focus, because we have a lot of challenges. Education around the world is not perfect. We know this. There's not a single country that can say their system is perfect. So we can really learn from each other and start sharing solutions, start sharing tools and everything else. But unfortunately, often those of us from either small countries or from developing economies or from economies that are not the wealthiest, we always think that the countries that are the richest are the ones that have a perfect system. And I've lived in the US for many, many years, and I have yet to see anybody who says our education system is perfect. It doesn't. We're always evolving, we're always innovating, we're always looking for new things to make things better. So,
yeah, sometimes it's a different kind of measure how the quality of education is.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of things to learn.
Yeah.
But the most important is how teachers choose the tool that fix and try to solve the problem in their own classroom.
Yeah.
Not the whole system, just the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's you said the magic comes.
Yeah.
And there's I think one of the best tools we have in the whole world that is instructional design.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us something about, because you are really expert of that?
You know, so instruction design is an interesting field for me, because there's a few ways to look at it. Some people look at it as a way to design effective instruction, right? Effective and efficient. So let's say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to fish, right? Can I design an instruction that will efficiently and quickly teach you how to do that, right? That's one way. Of course, I'm oversimplifying because the field is very big and it has other things. And there's a framework that is common in instruction design. It's called the ADDIE framework, right? Which basically stands for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And it basically says you first have to analyze the situation and see sort of what is needed, right? Because keep in mind, we said earlier about innovation is about a need. We always need to be able to understand what is the need in this context, because that need might be different somewhere else. You can be teaching someone fishing. You can if you and I both need to learn how to fish, we might have different needs about that. We might need different. Our teacher might need to use a different method for both of us to be able to get it, because the method that works for you might just not compute in my head, right? So the analysis part of instruction design is really about this framework of analyzing the need, the situation, and coming up with the right solution, designing it, developing it, then you implement it. And then once you implement it, you kind of see if it works, then you evaluate about whether or not it's effective. And then either you start from the bottom again, from the A again, and go around almost like an iterative process, or you can move in a different space. So there's that part of it. But there's also a paper that I wrote with my good friend and collaborator, Dr. Camille Dickinson Dean, who is at University of Sydney in Australia. And we basically said instructional design is about solving problems, right? So it's about finding what is the problem that you want to design, you want to create, right? There's some of the history around instructional design started with people trying to train fighter pilots in the war on how to be able to learn faster, to be able to fly these planes and participate in the war and so on, right? So there was a problem, and instructional design was a way to find a solution for that, right? So there is all of those type of things. But I think for me, the exciting thing about instruction design is about saying, okay, wait a minute, we need to do this. How do we do it? And now we come up with a solution, and going through very specific, systematic ways of doing that. There's a lot of different models, different framework. My good friend Dr. Tanya Ducey, who's now a dean at Alaska, and Professor Rob Branch at University of Georgia, they have a good book called The Survey of Instructional Design Models. And they have all of these different models that you can use in instruction design. And then one of the models in there is actually one by Dr. Patricia Young, who's at the University of Maryland in Baltimore County. And her model, like we were talking about earlier, really looks at the role of culture and how do you integrate culture into the process? How do you take note of culture in that? So it's a very nice and rich field that allows us to really design and come up with solutions to different problems. So
that's great. That's what I said, that it's a really good tool for every teacher, because you have a guide for how to start.
Yes.
Thinking in the context, the problem.
Yeah.
And right now we have a lot of tools, technological tools, to try to make a good design.
Absolutely.
to try to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
So after COVID, we have to change the way we teach.
Yeah.
So some people thought that using technology, it was only open your Zoom and send your maybe your PowerPoint in a good way.
Yeah.
But some keep talking just to the camera. So what do you think was the lessons of the COVID?
There's, COVID is I don't know what the right word to use. There's a part of me that want to say it's a funny thing. There's a part of me that want to say it's a sad thing. There's a part of me that want to say but I guess the correct way is just a complicated, because COVID, a lot of people lost their lives during COVID.
Yes.
A lot of us lost family members during COVID. So it's very hard to say there's lessons from COVID because of the loss that we experience. But at the same time, there were lessons from COVID, especially around education. And I'm afraid that we are wasting the opportunity, because it really gave us opportunities to rethink how we educate, how we do education. And you're right. Earlier you said some people think that education technology is just turning on Zoom. And one of the things that COVID did is COVID created false experts, right? People who think that they're experts in just about anything, right? Think about people who didn't even pass basic science, and somehow they were experts on the vaccine, right? And you're like, but how, right? There are people who, there was just so many different experts. And one of those experts is people who say, oh, no, now I can do educational technology. Professor Chuck Hodges at the University of, I think, Georgia Southern, with other colleagues like Dr. Barbara Locke at Virginia Tech and others, wrote a very good piece of article in EduCause, where they basically make a case that they said, no, what happened during COVID was not online education. It was not at all. It was emergency remote learning. It was an emergency. We didn't have a system. All we knew that, wait a minute, school can't be in person, and we have to find a way for people to continue going to school. So we were making things up as we go. You had students who were very young doing gym on camera, on Zoom. Now, if we look at that, we think that's ridiculous. But what option did we have? They couldn't go outside, so they have to exercise in the classroom, right? We learned a lot about doing things at a distance, right? So whereas you could you have to go to the lab to do experiments. Some people, like my good friend Dr. Uttam Tamba at University of UT Southwestern in Dallas, is very big. He's an organic chemist. He's very big on doing chemistry with basic home materials, right? During COVID, I think we were pushed to discover these things about how to do all of these things. So we learned a lot about what we can do. Now that COVID is done, I think some of us just said, well, we're done with that. Let's go back to how we're doing things, which for me is a shame. But at the same time, we also said, well, I could do this with my camera and Zoom. That means that we don't need education technology. And I'm like, no, this is educational technology, online education, distance education. And I think those for me are all part of the same family, part of the same umbrella. They've been around for decades and some even centuries. There's established theories, models, frameworks, and tons of journals and publication that we have tested all these things out. And we have lessons that we have learned from all of these things. Now to dismiss them and just say, well, I taught online during COVID, that means I'm an expert, I think that's just sad. We really need to, I hope one day we'll sit down and say, what happened during COVID in education? What did we learn? What can we get rid of? And what can we keep? Because I think there's a lot of really good lessons that we can learn from it. So
Yes,
yeah.
I completely agree with you. We have to rethink not only how to teach, how are living.
Yeah.
Because COVID transforms our lives.
Yes.
As you said, some people lose a lot of families.
Yeah.
It changed.
Yeah.
It changed the mind. It changed the even the way we live and rethink.
Yeah.
What we are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm saying that because it's part of the culture. It's
Yeah.
part of our children's are thinking right now.
Yeah.
So we have a different kind of thinking in
Yeah.
our children, our students,
Yeah.
and we have to design the
Yeah.
different situations
Yeah.
for learning.
Absolutely. We have to rethink certain things. We have to, and I think it has to. We shouldn't be afraid to think through things. We shouldn't be afraid to question the thing. Just because a system has been around for a long time doesn't mean that it's perfect. We have to rethink certain things. We have to say, okay, well, does school have to be as long as it is? Do we have to use the same exact periods? Do we have to have school going face to face every single day? Can we have certain things that are online? Do we have to teach all of the materials that we're teaching before, or can we mix and collapse certain things and make them shorter or longer? What's really important, right? So, and I think teachers, we know how to do this, right? You teach, you and I both teach. Yes. We know that if we have 16 weeks in a semester and we have a whole syllabus, and let's say by week 15 we find that, oh man, we still have 5 modules left. We've only done 15. What do? You don't give up. You say, I'm going to look at all these 5 modules. I'm going to distill the most important parts so that I make sure my students still have it, right? So I think we have to look at all of these things and say, okay, what can we really pull out of this that is really the most important things from all these lessons? And how do we move forward? How do we become better? How do we build a better and more resilient education system, because COVID showed us that our education systems globally were not resilient. That doesn't matter whether you are from the poorest country or from the richest country. We all realize that our systems still have a lot of issues that need to be addressed.
Exactly.
So,
So we have to reflection
Yeah.
to make some reflections about what happened
Yeah.
3 years ago.
yeah.
So thank you, Tutaleni. So just to finish, you have a message for teachers for the future. That is uncertain, of course, but a message to give some hard
Some motivation.
Motivation,
So-
yes.
I think the best motivation that I can give to teachers is just to say thank you, right? Because there's not a single profession in this world that does not owe its existence to teachers. There's not a single thing, right? Now, there are three things that I've always realized, right? Teachers, education happens as a result of interaction between the teachers, the students, and the environment. From time to time, teachers look different. Some of it can be a physical person in the classroom. Some of it can be an apprentice situation, someone who's teaching you how to cook, how to do welding, and all that stuff. Some of it can be just the environment where you're walking somewhere, you hit your head in the wall, and you say, "Oh, wait a minute! I've learned that I shouldn't go to that place anymore." So those can look different. The students can also look different. It can be a 5-year-old, it could be a 99-year-old, a 100-year-old. It could be somebody in a classroom, it could be somebody in the hospital, it could be somebody anywhere else. Those can look different, and the environment can all look different. But I think one of the things that I can honestly say is that the majority of the teachers that we have are doing this because they really want what's best for their students. And we owe them a significant amount of gratitude, because the other thing, what I said earlier, is that there's no education system that is perfect. I don't know of a single education system that pays their teachers the best, right? The teachers are always, educators are always the ones that are not well paid. Some countries pay better, but often across the board, they're not well paid. So we have to say very much thank you to them. The second part about motivation is that don't be afraid to fail. Right? It's not really about failing. It's about trying new things and learning new methods, new approaches. Experiment. And remember that you don't have to know everything. You don't know everything, even if you wanted to. None of us do. We lie to ourselves when we say we know everything. But the amazing thing is, our students also come to school with a lot of knowledge. They come to the university with a lot of knowledge. And if we can tap into that and make them part of the process, we learn from them, and they also learn to value what they know and that they have something to contribute. So I think, and then lastly, we also have to, as we said earlier about culture and context, teachers exist in a culture and a context. They exist in a society that doesn't always value them. They exist in a political system that says that teachers are just problem, and they just have all these teachers unions who want to create problems. They exist in a system that says, no, you have to do these things this way and that way and that way. And they're part of our community, so we also really have to ensure that we are as supportive to them, because learning is a community project, right? There's an African saying that it takes a village to raise a child, right? So a teacher is not just the person who is raising the child who's teaching, is not just the teacher in the classroom, it's also other people in that system. So I think for me, from teachers, just thank you for a great job that you do, especially teachers at the K-12, but also teachers at all levels at university and so forth. They do an amazing job. They need the support. And as teachers, we all just need to say, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try different things. It's okay to experiment. That's how you become creative, and that's how you innovate.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
yeah.
Thank you so
Sure,
much.
absolutely.
And you make me remind one phrase that says that when we talk thinking about education,
Yeah.
we have to think about how what kind of society
Yeah.
we want to be in the next years.
Exactly.
So we have to educate
Yeah.
right now for
Yeah.
the future.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tutaleni. It
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure to have you here at UPEP.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening that very interesting
Yes.
interview.
Fantastic.
See you in the next. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.